In the midst of prime time on American TV, a famous anchor was preparing a trap for Donald Trump. The studio was buzzing, the cameras were rolling, and the audience was waiting for an explosion. She planned to destroy his image by digging into his personal life, but she didn't know that Trump would turn the game around. That night was her biggest failure and his triumph. The neon glow of New York City pulsed through the towering glass windows of the Prime Pulse studio, a sleek, modern fortress of broadcast television perched in the heart of Manhattan. It was 8:55 p.m., just minutes before the live taping of one of America's most watched talk shows. Inside, the air buzzed with frenetic energy. Producers barked orders, cameramen adjusted lenses, and the audience shuffled into cushioned seats, their chatter a low roar of anticipation. At the center of it all stood Emily Wright, a 45-year-old liberal firebrand with a razor-sharp tongue and a reputation for shredding conservative guests. Tonight, her target was bigger than ever, Donald J. Trump. Emily paced the edge of the set, her heels clicking against the polished floor, a stack of cue cards gripped tightly in her manicured hands. Her dark hair was swept into a flawless bob, her navy blazer crisp and commanding. She'd built her career on moments like this. High-stakes ambushes disguised as interviews, where she'd lure her prey with soft questions before sinking her teeth into their personal lives. Tonight, she was gunning for a knockout. Her team had spent days crafting a battle plan, dismantle Trump's larger-than-life persona by dragging his marriage to Melania into the spotlight. He's all about family values, right? She'd smirked during the prep meeting earlier that week. Let's see how he squirms when we ask why Melania is barely seen or heard. The age gap, the rumors. America deserves the dirt. The studio lights flared to life, casting a harsh glow over the minimalist set. 2 leather chairs, a glass table, and a massive LED screen flashing the Prime Pulse logo. Backstage, her producer, a wiry man named Greg, adjusted his headset and shot her a thumbs up. "He's here," Greg muttered into the comms. Trump just rolled up in the black SUV. Secret Service is with him. Emily's lips curled into a predatory grin. Perfect. He's walking right into it. She'd pitched this as the interview of the year, a clash of titans that would dominate headlines and boost her ratings into the stratosphere. The network execs had salivated at the idea. Trump, the brash ex-president and real estate mogul, facing off against their golden girl. What'd go wrong? Her team huddled one last time, flipping through notes. "Start easy," Greg advised, tapping a pen against his clipboard. "Business success, presidency, let him brag. Then pivot to Melania. Push the narrative. She's a trophy, a ghost. Make him defend it." Emily nodded, her mind racing. She pictured the moment she'd dropped the bomb. Some cutting question about Melania's silence or Trump's rumored wandering eye. She'd seen the tabloids, the whispers about their marriage being a sham. If she could crack that polished facade, she'd expose him as a hypocrite to millions. "This is my night," she whispered to herself, adjusting her mic. He won't know what hit him. But as the clock ticked down, a ripple of unease flickered through the crew. Trump wasn't just any guest. He'd dodged scandals, lawsuits, and political traps with a showman's flair for years. "You sure about this, Em?" Greg asked, his brow furrowing. "He's not some rookie senator. He thrives on chaos." She waved him off. "I've got this. He's arrogant. He'll overplay his hand." The stage manager's voice crackled through her earpiece. 3 minutes to air. The audience's hum grew louder, a mix of Trump fans in red hats and curious skeptics clutching overpriced coffee cups. Outside, the city skyline glittered, oblivious to the storm brewing within. Emily took her mark, smoothing her blazer. She could already taste the victory. Viral clips, think pieces, maybe even a Peabody nod. Trump might be a lion, but she was the hunter, and tonight she'd bagged the biggest trophy of her career. Or so she thought. As the countdown began, 3, 2, 1, the cameras rolled, and the trap was set. Little did she know, the night was about to spiral into a spectacle that would torch her carefully laid plans and leave her scrambling in the wreckage. The studio lights blazed as the Prime Pulse theme music thumped through the speakers, a pulsing beat that rattled the glass table between Emily Wright and her guest. The audience erupted into a chaotic mix of cheers and boos as the massive LED screen flashed a montage of skyscrapers, campaign rallies, and the White House. Emily stood center stage, her smile a practiced mask of warmth, though her eyes glinted with something sharper. "Good evening, America," she called out, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "Tonight, we've got a special guest, business titan, former president, and a man who needs no introduction, Donald J. Trump." The crowd roared again, some waving homemade signs, others folding their arms in silent judgment. Trump strode onto the set with the swagger of a man who'd face down worse than a TV studio. His navy suit was impeccable, his tie a bold red slash against a white shirt. He waved to the audience, 2 quick pumps of his hand, before settling into the leather chair across from Emily. Up close, she noticed the faint smirk tugging at his lips, like he already knew the game she was playing. "Mr. President," she began, leaning forward slightly, her tone syrupy sweet, "it's an honor to have you here. You've built an empire, influenced millions, even led the free world. Some might say you've had a lot of luck on your side. What do you think?" Trump tilted his head, sizing her up. The smirk widened. "Luck? That's a funny word, Emily. People love to toss it around when they want to downplay hard work. I didn't get where I am by flipping coins. I built skyscrapers, tremendous ones, the best, created thousands of jobs, won the presidency against all odds. Luck doesn't do that. It's grit, sacrifice, and a little thing called vision." His hands chopped the air for emphasis, a gesture the audience knew well. A few claps broke out, quickly drowned by murmurs from the skeptics. Emily nodded, her smile unwavering, though her fingers tightened around her cue cards. She'd expected the bravado. It was his brand, after all. Time to nudge the needle. So it's all about effort, then? No shortcuts, no silver spoons. She let the question hang, a subtle jab at his privileged roots. Trump didn't flinch. "Effort, absolutely. I worked nights, closed deals nobody else could. Lost sleep, took risks. But I didn't do it alone. I had people, great people, behind me. My family, especially. They're the backbone." His voice softened on that last word, and Emily's ears pricked up. There was the hook she'd been waiting for. "Family," she echoed, shifting in her seat, her tone still light but edged with curiosity. "That's a big word for you, isn't it? Let's talk about that. Your wife, Melania, she's been with you through it all, but we don't see her much. No interviews, no big speeches. Why is that? Is she just shy?" The question landed like a pebble in a still pond, ripples spreading through the room. A few audience members leaned forward, others whispered to their neighbors. Emily kept her gaze locked on Trump, waiting for the crack she was sure would come. Trump's smirk faded, replaced by a steely glint in his eyes. He leaned back, crossing one leg over the other, exuding a calm that made her stomach twist. "Melania? Shy." He chuckled, low and dry. "She's not shy, Emily. She's discreet. There's a difference. Dignity doesn't need a megaphone. She's brilliant, speaks 5 languages, worked hard before we even met. She doesn't yap just to fill airtime, unlike some folks in your line of work." A ripple of laughter rolled through the crowd, and Emily felt a flicker of heat in her cheeks. The dig stung, but she pressed on, her smile tightening. "Discreet, sure," she said, tilting her head as if mulling it over. "But she's the former First Lady. People expect more, visibility, a voice. Michelle Obama, Hillary Clinton, they were out there, active. Melania's, well, she's practically invisible. Don't you think the public deserves to know who's standing beside you?" Her words were laced with just enough faux innocence to mask the venom. She could feel the producers in her earpiece, Greg's voice a faint buzz. "Good, Em. Keep pushing." Trump's expression didn't waver, but his fingers drummed once on the armrest, a tell she almost missed. "The public knows what matters," he said, his voice steady as granite. "Melania's not invisible. She's real. She doesn't chase cameras or beg for headlines. She's got class, something you don't see much of these days. If she speaks less, it's because she says what counts. Not everyone needs to scream to be heard." The audience split again, half cheering, half scoffing, but Emily caught the shift. He wasn't dodging. He was counterpunching. She adjusted her approach, sensing the need to dig deeper. "Fair enough," she conceded, her tone still smooth. "But let's be real, people talk. They wonder about her role, her silence. Some say she's just decoration, a trophy for a powerful man. What do you say to that?" The room hushed, the air thick with anticipation. She'd thrown the first real punch, and she leaned back, waiting for the flinch. Trump's eyes narrowed, but that smirk crept back, slow and dangerous. Decoration, he repeated, his voice dropping an octave. You're about to find out what a bad idea that was, Emily. The studio air thickened as Emily Wright's last words, decoration, hung like a guillotine blade over the set of Prime Pulse. The audience held its breath, a collective gasp swallowed by the hum of the cameras. Emily sat poised, her navy blazer a shield, her smile a razor's edge. She'd lobbed the grenade, and now she waited for the explosion. Some stammer, a flash of temper, anything to crack Trump's polished armor. The LED screen behind them flickered with a still of Trump Tower, oblivious to the storm brewing below. Trump's smirk didn't falter. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his gaze boring into her like a predator sizing up a misstep. Decoration, he said again, rolling the word around as if tasting it. That's what you think of Melania? A trophy on a shelf? You folks in the media love that narrative, don't you? Reduces a strong woman to a prop. Sad. His voice carried that familiar cadence, part mockery, part indignation, and the crowd stirred. A few shouts of "Tell her, Don," broke out, countered by a hiss of boos from the other side. Emily's earpiece crackled. Greg's voice hissed, "He's baiting you. Pivot or push harder." She chose harder. "Come on, Mr. President," she said, her tone sharpening as she waved a hand dismissively. "It's not about me. It's about what people see. Melania's stunning, no question, but she's silent. A mystery. And you're a powerful guy. Rich, famous, influential. Some say her biggest achievement was landing you. Doesn't that ever bother you?" The question was a dagger, dipped in honey, and she delivered it with a tilt of her head, feigning curiosity. The audience murmured, a low rumble of shock and intrigue. She could feel the ratings spiking already. Trump's jaw tightened, a flicker of something dark crossing his face. For a split second, Emily thought she'd hit the mark. Then he laughed, a short, barking sound that echoed off the studio walls. "Bother me? You think Melania is some damsel who lucked into a ring? Let me tell you something, Emily. She built a career, modeling, international, tough business, long before I came along. She's got brains, grit, dignity. If anyone's bothered, it's the press who can't handle a woman who doesn't grovel for their approval." The crowd split again, applause clashing with grumbles, and Emily felt the first bead of sweat prick her neck. He wasn't crumbling. He was rallying. She pressed on, her voice rising to cut through the noise. "Okay, fine, she's accomplished. But let's get real. You're Donald Trump, larger than life. Power opens doors, attracts attention. People wonder, doesn't a man like you ever think about trading up? Someone younger? Flashier? It's a fair question." The words landed like a slap, raw and unfiltered. The studio went dead silent. A collective inhale, sucking the oxygen from the room. A woman in the front row gasped audibly, clutching her purse. Emily leaned back, folding her arms, daring him to dodge. Trump didn't move. His eyes locked on hers, unblinking, and for a moment, the only sound was the faint whine of the overhead lights. Then he spoke, his voice low and deliberate, each word a hammer strike. "You just asked if I trade my wife like she's a used car. Let that sink in, Emily. You're sitting there, smiling, asking if I'd dump the woman who stood by me through hell. Lawsuits, campaigns, fake news garbage for some fling. That's not a question. That's an insult." The room erupted. Cheers and jeers collided, a wave of noise that rocked the set. A man in a red hat leapt to his feet, yelling, "Shame on you," while others shouted him down. Emily's smile faltered, her pulse hammering. She hadn't expected this. His calm fury was a wall she couldn't climb. "I'm not insulting anyone," she shot back, raising her hands as if to calm the storm. "I'm reflecting what people whisper about. Powerful men, trophy wives. It's a conversation." But the lie tasted bitter. She'd gone too far, and the audience knew it. Her earpiece buzzed again, Greg frantic. "Tone it down, Em. We're losing them." She ignored it, doubling down. "Look, you preach family values. If Melania's so vital, why isn't she here defending herself?" That's when the twist hit. The stage manager's voice cut through her earpiece, urgent. "Emily, we've got to call in. It's Melania. She's on the line, watching from home. Wants to speak." Emily froze, her mouth half open. The producers hadn't planned this. Trump's head tilted, a glint of amusement in his eyes, as if he'd sensed the shift. "Go ahead," he said, gesturing to the air. "Patch her in. Let's see what my wife has to say about your conversation." The audience buzzed, heads swiveling to the control booth. Emily's stomach dropped. She'd set the trap for him, but now the jaws were snapping shut on her. A technician scrambled to connect the call, and the LED screen flickered. The room held its breath, waiting for Melania's voice to break the chaos. Emily forced a laugh, thin and brittle. "Well, this should be interesting," she said, but her hands trembled on the cue cards. Trump just watched, his smirk back in full force, a king reclaiming his throne. The Prime Pulse studio vibrated with raw energy as the LED screen flickered, the words "incoming call" pulsing in red. Emily Wright's fingers dug into the armrests of her chair, her polished facade cracking under the weight of the moment. The audience leaned forward, a sea of wide eyes and half-open mouths, caught between shock and glee. Donald Trump sat back, legs crossed, his smirk now a full-on grin, as if he'd orchestrated the chaos himself. "Go on, Emily," he said, his voice a taunting drawl. "You want a Melania. Let's hear her." The crowd buzzed, a mix of cheers and nervous laughter rippling through the rows. Emily's earpiece crackled. "Greg, near panic. She's live in 10 seconds. Keep it together." She forced a smile, her lips tight, and nodded to the control booth. "Well, folks," she said, her voice pitching higher than intended, "it seems we've got a surprise guest. Let's welcome Melania Trump." The screen blinked, and there she was, Melania, framed in soft light, her face serene yet steely, gazing out from what looked like a plush living room. Her dark hair cascaded over a cream sweater, and her eyes locked onto the camera with an intensity that silenced the room. "Emily," Melania began, her voice cool and measured, accented but commanding. "I've been watching. You seem very curious about me. What is it you want to know?" The question was a velvet glove over an iron fist, and it hit Emily like a sucker punch. The audience gasped, then burst into scattered applause. Emily's mind raced. She hadn't prepped for this, hadn't expected Melania to step into her trap. Melania," she stammered, scrambling for footing. "Thanks for joining us. I was just asking your husband about your role, your voice. People wonder why we don't hear more from you." Melania's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. "I choose my words carefully," she said. "I don't need to shout to be heard. I work for children, for respect online, things that matter. But you don't ask about that. You ask if I'm what? A decoration?" The word dripped with disdain, echoing Emily's earlier jab. The crowd roared, some shouting, "Yes, Melania," while others whistled. Emily's face burned. She'd lost the thread, and Melania was spinning it back on her. Trump jumped in, his voice booming over the noise. "See, Emily? That's my wife. Smart, tough, no nonsense. She doesn't play your game, and neither do I. You thought you'd drag her through the mud, but she's standing tall. That's real strength." The audience erupted again, a wave of cheers drowning out a few boos. A man in the back stood, pumping his fist, while a woman near the front clutched her hands to her chest, nodding fiercely. Emily's earpiece buzzed. "Greg, you're sinking. Pivot now." But she couldn't pivot. The tide had turned. Desperate, she tried to claw back control. "Melania, no one's dragging anyone," she said, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow. "We're just talking about your marriage. People speculate. It's a big age gap, a big life. Don't you ever feel overshadowed?" It was a weak swing, and she knew it. Melania's eyes narrowed, her calm unshaken. "Overshadowed? No, I'm my own person. I chose this life, this man. We built something real. Years, trust, sacrifice. You think that the shadow? Maybe you don't understand what lasts." The crowd cheered louder, a standing ovation starting in patches. Trump leaned forward, his grin triumphant. "Let me finish this, Emily. You asked if I trade her up? Like she's a stock option. Here's the truth. Melania's been with me when the cameras were off, when the world bet against me. She took the hits, your hits, and never blinked. That's not a trophy. That's a partner. You want to talk family values? That's it right there." His hand sliced the air, and the studio shook with applause. A chant of "Trump, Trump," broke out, chaotic and unstoppable. Emily's smile was gone. her cue cards useless. She opened her mouth to respond, but the stage manager's voice cut through. We've got a problem. Social media is exploding. Clips are viral already. She glanced at the audience. Half were on their phones, filming, tweeting, amplifying the meltdown. She tried one last jab. Okay, but don't you think a first lady should be out there, fighting for equality like others? It was a Hail Mary, and it fell flat. Trump shrugged, unfazed. Equality? Sure, but Melania fights her way. Quiet, steady, effective. She doesn't need to scream about it. You mocked her accent once, remember? She kept going, class act. You should try covering that instead of gossip. The crowd roared again, and Melania added, I serve my country my way. That's enough. Her image faded from the screen, leaving Emily staring at a blank void. The studio was a battlefield now. Emily's plan in ashes, Trump and Melania reigning supreme. She swallowed hard, her throat dry. Well, she croaked. That's the perspective. Let's take a break. The cameras cut, but the damage was done. Trump stood, waving to the crowd, while Emily sank into her chair, the cheers a deafening reminder of her miscalculation. The Primepole studio went dark as the cameras cut to commercial, but the chaos lingered like smoke after a fire. Emily Wright slumped in her chair, her navy blazer wrinkled, her face a mask of forced composure as the audience's cheers for Donald Trump echoed off the walls. He stood at the edge of the set, shaking hands with fans who'd rushed forward, their phones still glowing with live streams and hasty tweets. Great job, Don, a man yelled, waving a red hat. Emily's earpiece buzzed. Greg, horse, we're screwed, Em. Clips are everywhere. Twitter, YouTube, even CNN's got it. You're trending, but not how we wanted. She ripped the device out, her hands shaking. Backstage, the control room was a war zone. Producers shouted over each other, screens flashing with real-time metrics. Hashtag Trump Triumph and hashtag Emily Flops spiking into the millions. We've lost 2 sponsors already. A suit barked, slamming a phone down. They're calling it a train wreck. Emily stumbled in, her heels unsteady, and tried to rally. We can spin this, she said, her voice thin. I'll go back out, pivot to Melania's projects, something positive. Greg shook his head, grim. Too late. They're not buying it. You cross a line, and they're eating us alive. Out in the world, the fallout was instant. Clips of Trump's fiery defense. You asked if I trade my wife like a used car, spread like wildfire, racking up views by the second. Melania's cool rebuke. Maybe you don't understand what lasts. Became a meme, plastered over images of her poised on the screen. Couples across America chimed in online. Been married 25 years. Emily's clueless, one tweet read. Another. Trump's right. Loyalty isn't disposable. Shame on her. Conservative pundits pounced, hailing Trump as a family values warrior, while even some liberals winced, calling the trade-up question crass and misogynistic. Emily returned for the final segment, her smile a ghost of itself. Welcome back, she croaked, the audience quieter now, some seats empty. Mr. President, let's shift gears. Tell us about Melania's work. Trump, still basking in the glow, leaned back. Finally, a real question. She's got projects, big ones, helping kids, fighting cyberbullying. Tremendous stuff, but you folks don't cover it. Doesn't sound like your gossip, right? His jab landed soft but sharp, and a few claps broke the silence. Emily nodded, lifeless. Thanks for sharing. That's all tonight, folks. The credits rolled to tepid applause, a far cry from the night's roaring start. The next day, Melania stepped into the spotlight, an impromptu event in D.C., her first public move since the interview. Dressed in a sleek white coat, she spoke briefly to a crowd of supporters. I choose my battles, she said, her voice steady. I honor this country my way, not for headlines, but for purpose. The applause was warm, genuine, a stark contrast to Emily's debacle. Photos of her standing tall flooded the internet, captioned with her own words, what lasts? Trump tweeted later, Melania, class, strength, the best. Media can't touch her. For Emily, the wreckage piled up. Her show's ratings tanked, down 30% in a week, as sponsors bailed and viewers tuned out. Her apology, aired days later, fell flat. I didn't mean to offend. I was asking what people think. Twitter roasted her. You meant every word. Own it. one user snapped. The network brass huddled, debating her fate, cut her loose or rebrand. She's toxic now, an exec muttered. That trade-up line, it's her tombstone. Talk shows dissected her blunder, from Fox crowing about Trump's win to MSNBC grudgingly admitting she'd overreached. Trump, meanwhile, milked the victory. At a rally in Ohio, he grinned to a packed house. They came for my family, folks, but we showed them, me and Melania, rock solid. The media? They don't get it, never will. The crowd chanted her name, a new rallying cry. His base swelled, and even fence-sitters nodded. Whatever you thought of his politics, the guy fought for his wife. Radio hosts replayed his lines. That's not a trophy. That's a partner, calling it a masterclass in flipping the script. Months later, the interview lingered as a cautionary tale. Emily clung to her show, but the spark was gone. Her questions softer, her edge dulled. Prime Pulse limped on, a shadow of its former self, while Trump and Melania emerged stronger, their bond a public emblem of defiance. The viral question, "Don't you ever think about trading up?" became a punchline, a symbol of media arrogance undone. For millions who'd watched, it wasn't just about politics anymore. It was about a man and woman standing firm against a world that saw love as a headline to shred. And in that fight, the Trumps had won.